You don't quite remember when you first noticed the fuel gauge sinking, just that it had been falling for a while. The needle's descent was as gradual and unnoticed as the highway itself, which had slowly thinned from a bustling artery into a lonely two-lane ribbon. It stretched through miles and miles of pale, sun-bleached scrub and absolute nothingness. I kept driving, my foot steady on the pedal, because turning back felt utterly pointless. Behind me was the same suffocating emptiness that lay ahead. It was like being trapped between two identical mirrors, each reflecting an endless void. The sun, a merciless orange orb all day, finally began to drop. It went down fast, as if it couldn't stand another second in this desolate sky. The horizon bled out, the colors shifting from fiery orange to a bruised purple and deep, unsettling indigo. Darkness didn't just fall. It seeped up from the ground, swallowing the landscape whole. That's when my headlights, cutting a weak, trembling path through the gloom, caught the sign. It was old, wooden, and weathered, standing just off the shoulder. Gas Food Lodging 1 mile. An arrow, crudely painted, pointed toward a narrow dirt road that I swear hadn't been there a second earlier. It was as if the earth had just split open to reveal it. My heart gave a little jump of relief. I took the turn. Of course I did. When you're lost in the middle of nowhere, with your tank running on fumes and a primal fear creeping into your bones, any sign of life feels like salvation. You don't question it. You just follow the promise of light and safety. The dirt road was rough, my car bumping and groaning in protest. Dust plumed up behind me, a ghostly trail in the rearview mirror. After what felt like much longer than a single mile, the station appeared. It emerged from the twilight at the edge of the desert like a half-forgotten memory, a held-breath moment from a dream. There was one flickering pump, its single light casting long, dancing shadows. A squat, square building with windows so coated in dust they were almost opaque. And a crooked neon sign that buzzed weakly, its letters struggling to stay lit open. Though, and the E flickered in a desperate, dying rhythm. I pulled up next to the pump and killed the engine. The sudden silence was deafening. I stepped out of the car, and the residual heat of the day radiated up from the baked earth, a physical presence. The silence here was different. It was thick, heavy, pressing in on me. No crickets chirping. No whisper of wind through the scrub. No, anything. It was the sound of a world holding its breath. The door to the station had a small bell attached to it, and it chimed with a frail, tinny sound as I pushed my way inside. The air was cool and still. It smelled strange, a mix of old metal, stale coffee, and something cloyingly sweet, like flowers left to long and stagnant water. The smell of decay masquerading as perfume. Hello? My voice came out smaller than I expected, thin and reedy. It was swallowed by the oppressive quiet of the room. For a moment, there was no reply. Then I heard it. A soft shuffle, the sound of fabric brushing against a surface, coming from behind the high wooden counter that dominated the small space. I approached slowly, my footsteps echoing on the dusty floorboards. The shelves were mostly bare, lined with a few faded cans and boxes of products from decades ago. A film of grime covered everything. The figure standing there wore a faded, gray attendant's uniform, the kind you only see in old black and white photos. Their head was bowed, completely obscuring their face under the deep shadow of their cap. They were unnaturally still. "Sorry to bother you," I said, my voice a little stronger this time. "I just need some gas. My car's almost empty." There was a long pause. Then their chin lifted, just a fraction. It was such a small movement, but it felt significant. Then they spoke. But the voice didn't match the body. It wasn't one voice. It was layered, a chorus of faint whispers all speaking at once, a discordant harmony that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "You're not supposed to be here yet." The words slithered into the air that I froze. A profound, instinctual cold crawled up my spine, a feeling that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. It was the cold of pure dread, what? I managed to stammer, my throat suddenly tight. "Not yet," the voices repeated, a little louder this time, gaining confidence. But the attendant raised a hand, a slow, deliberate motion. The hand was pale, the fingers long and thin. It pointed behind me, toward the front of the station. I hesitated, a war raging inside me. One part of my brain screamed not to look, to run, to do anything but obey this thing. But the other, more powerful part, the part driven by morbid curiosity, took over. I turned. I looked out the big, dusty front window. My car was still there, a dark shape sitting abandoned at the pump. But the dessert was gone. In its place was a vast, unending stretch of darkness. It wasn't the darkness of night. It was a flat, featureless, starless void, an absolute black that seemed to absorb the very concept of light. And something was moving in it. Far out, but getting closer. Not walking. Not running. Just sliding. A formless shape gliding silently over the impossible terrain, making its way toward the station. Panic seized me. A raw, animal terror that bypassed all rational thought. I scrambled back to the door, my hands fumbling for the handle. I pulled, I twisted, I slammed my shoulder against it. It didn't budge. It was like trying to move a mountain. The wood felt strangely warm, almost alive, as if it were an animal's hide breathing shallowly under my desperate hands. Behind me, the attendant spoke again, the whispering voices calm, conversational. I noticed when you came off the road, my pulse was a frantic drum banging against my ribs, in my ears. I spun around to face the figure. I noticed. Slowly, deliberately, the head began to rise. The shadow of the cap receded. And I saw. There was no face beneath the cap. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just a smooth, taut expanse of pale skin, like a featureless mask stretched over a skull. The one who waits for the lost, the voices whispered from the blank face. Just then, the windows began to darken. Not from a passing cloud, not from a shadow. Something was pressing against the glass from the outside. A thick, inky blackness was spreading across the panes, obscuring the view of the void. It was curious. It was testing the building's integrity. I stumbled backward, away from the windows, away from the door, my mind reeling. I wanted to scream, to let out the terror coiling in my gut, but the sound crawled backward into my throat, choking me. The faceless attendant took a step out from behind the counter, its movement stiff and unnatural. It stepped closer, its arm lifting again, finger pointing not at the door, not at the windows, but directly at me. It knows your name now. The lights in the station flickered violently, buzzing and popping. And from the darkness outside, from the thing pressing against the glass, a sound began to form. A low, sibilant whisper. And it was whispering my name. Over and over. The station groaned around me, the sound of stressed wood and metal. The whispering grew louder, coming from all sides, a storm of voices all calling for me. The faceless attendant stood perfectly still, its finger aimed at my heart, a silent conductor to this symphony of horror. And I knew, with a certainty that was colder and sharper than any fear I had ever felt, that this wasn't just a place I had stumbled upon. It was a destination, and I had finally arrived.